Compelling and enterprising changes are becoming the norm in Asia. A new cycle of high-tech innovation is pushing industrialization. Regional integration through free trade agreements and multilateral frameworks like the AIIB have flourished at a time of growing anti-globalization sentiments and expanding protectionism. However, continuing chaos in the Middle East and a very real flashpoint around the Korean Peninsula pose risks to the progress witnessed across Asia. Are we able to perceive yet the future development of major economic giants in Asia? What are the major challenges facing regional governance and integration this year? And how will prominent countries influence this region? To discuss these issues and more, I'm very happy to be able to interview Ambassador Zhou Wenzhong, Secretary General of the Boao Forum for Asia. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to Dialogue, Ambassador Zhou. The year 2018 will be the last year for you to be the Secretary General of Boao Forum for Asia and your team. In your review, what do you think are the most remarkable achievements?
The Boao Forum for Asia is a regional organization. It is a great pleasure for me to work for this regional organization under the leadership of the board of Boao Forum for Asia.
For 8 years?
For 8 years. And I think what we've done is to try to provide a platform where countries in the region, and also for that matter for countries outside the region, to work together to try to build up a consensus on how to accomplish co-development. And this is very important because globalization is with us for a long time, yet it was not balanced. It was not sort of beneficial for everyone. And the result of that is the widening of the gap between the rich and poor in terms of developed countries and developing countries. So that is why we try to make the globalization more balanced and more open and more inclusive. So I think in that sense, the Boao Forum has been growing along with the changes which have taken place in terms of globalization. So this is a very good opportunity for the forum, and also an opportunity for me to contribute what I can do for the forum. And in that sense, I think the board of Boao Forum for Asia has done a good job, led by the chairman and the vice chairman and other members of the board.
Do you have the ambition to be a good match for the World Economic Forum in Davos?
It's a bit different because the Davos Forum has been there for a long time. It is mostly a forum not dominated. Maybe that is not a very good word, but at least guided mostly by developed countries. They were there to talk about themselves in most cases. Of course, in the name of talking about the world economy. But in their mind, I think maybe the world economy is the economy of the developed countries. So they...
In other words, it might be a platform for the G7 member states.
Yeah, if you like it.
But today it's the world for the G20.
So what I'm trying to say is that they haven't given enough attention to what developing countries need. So what we are doing is it's a platform for Asian countries and also for developing economies. So this is what we are.
Ambassador Zhou, is it a curse? Every 10 years we're going to have a financial meltdown. For example, in 1998 we had that financial crisis in Asia, and 10 years later in Wall Street. This year is 2018. Now you took office as a Secretary General of Boao 2 years after the Wall Street financial meltdown. Was it a very difficult moment for you?
It should not be the case. Some people, of course, in their mind, that was the pattern, or they think it may continue to be the pattern. But I think things are changing because the world is no longer a world dominated by the developed countries, and they need to understand it's a world of developed countries plus developing countries. And for instance, taking Asia, for example, Asia is growing. The size of Asia's economy now accounts for 40% of the world's total. In other words, the GDP of Asia countries account for 40% of the world GDP. And actually, the trade between Asian countries themselves are more than trade between Asia and North America, and for that matter, between Asia and EU. So that is to say, Asia is growing, and Asia is playing an even still greater important role. And the financial crisis is because they were sort of manipulating the market, and at the end, they hurt themselves. So I think that's a curse. They deserve the curse. So I don't think because the Asian countries are now put more emphasis on infrastructure, on not just the finance, but infrastructure is what we are trying to do. That's because we have set up AIIB, and so a lot of the resources have been diverted to infrastructure development projects, and One Belt One Road proposal has come to be the focus. I think for many countries along the Belt and the Road has been accepted by many countries along the road and the Belt, and even countries in Europe want to be part of it. So they feel maybe it's time for them to give more focus or more attention to the real economy rather than the so-called the finance.
Great changes have taken place since you took office. China becomes the second biggest economy, the biggest trading power. We are 5 times the economic size of India. So China is not what it was. Having said this, my question is, do you think you have done anything major to reform and restructure the Secretariat of the Boao Forum for Asia itself to live up to the expectations of great times?
The size of the Secretariat now is a bit larger than it used to be. Now we have 30 people working here, but obviously 30 people not a large number. So we actually we need a lot of volunteers. Actually, right now, many people are working as volunteers for the annual meeting. So we are really very grateful for them, to them for their service. The Boao Forum is a regional organization. It's a non-governmental organization, and we can 100% rely on the contributions from our members and from sponsors. And so financially, so that's how we are running the organization. And the forum itself is a large event, which would be attended by about 2,000 delegates. And of course, we have some 200 members. I mean, the forum has some 200 members, and but many who will be with us during the forum are not members. They just come. They try to learn from the speakers. There will be 60-some events. I think around about 40 discussion. I mean, this sort of sub-meetings and the different topics. And the theme for this year is open and sort of innovative Asia for the a world of great prosperity. So I think for the Secretariat, what we do is we try to solicit opinions from different sources, including the members of the board and also the members of the advisory council, and also from the academics and also from the business community.
Ambassador Zhou, that's exactly my next question about how diversified and inclusive the Secretariat in terms of your working relationship with, first of all, Mr. Fukuda, former Japanese Prime Minister, and Mr. Ramos, former President of the Philippines. With the two countries, we have developed the border disputes and maritime disputes. So was it a major problem for you to say hello to them and to put on a smile and you can work on normal working terms?
Both Chairman Fukuda and also Chairman Ramos have done a great deal for the forum, for the development of the forum. So they will go down and will, in the history of the World Forum as the contributors, very important contributors, starters, founders. I think they draw the line very clearly, because this is a regional forum, and it's basically an economic and trade forum. And so what we are concerned about is about Asia's development. So the issues are talked about are mostly trade and economy related.
So in other words, what you did is to provide public service and public products instead of being restricted to your national identity of individual countries. You can rise above your individual national identity and contribute to the public service. Is that your point?
That's the nature of the forum. So it decides what kind of service they need. Yeah.
Having said this, you did mention the theme of the forum, innovative and open. Are you sort of alluding to the issue of artificial intelligence, blockchain technology, and biotechnology? Now, these are what we call the driving forces for the sustainability of the world economy. In what area do you think this year you have made extra efforts to facilitate dynamic discussions in the annual event?
The theme is a description of where we are in Asia. As Asia is more open and more innovative, and that's where the growth has come from, mostly. That is also an expectation for future in terms of Asia's development. That is because we all understand that we have come to the end of the old model of development. That is to say, we try to increase the input of production by increase the input of productive elements to try to speed up the growth. And I think that's what we used to do, and that's what growth for most of the Asian countries came from. But we have almost exhausted that development model. So we need to identify a new source of growth. And now the conclusion is that maybe innovation will be the next sort of new source for more growth for Asian countries. And of course, for that matter, Asia needs to open still more, still greater, open to other Asian countries and open to countries outside Asia. And so that's why we have 4 sort of emphasis. The first emphasis about globalization, about the Belt and Road. So second is about how to open still greater for Asia. So there are many dialogues, dialogue between business community of China and United States, and dialogue between the business community people from Japan and China, between China and India, and between China and South Korea, for instance. So what we try to do is, obviously there are problems in the bilateral trade relations between China and United States, between China and Japan, and so forth. So then where the answer is to all these problems. So we hope we can help the people to come to consensus to some extent on the Belt and Road, on also the globalization, and also the other emphasis is about how to structural reform. And the structural reform is actually the more fundamental issue with us and with Asian countries, other Asian countries. In terms of, I think that has been the focus of the National People's Congress, I think, to some extent. In other words, shortly after the closing of the National People's Congress, it was publicized. The plan was publicized about the restructuring of the government. So I think that's what countries in Asia are doing to make sure that the structural reform will take place. So that would also be discussed during the annual meeting. So as I said, there will be four sort of lines, if you like. Globalization, Belt and Road, that's one. And second is about how to make sure that Asia will be more open. And the third will be innovation. The fourth is about structural reform.
Thank you so much. You are watching Dialogue with Ambassador Zhou Wenzhong, currently Secretary General of the Boao Forum for Asia. We are discussing the theme of this year's event in Boao, as well as how he reviews his 8-year performance as the Chief Executive in the forum. Stay with us, we'll be right back. What do you think of the bluff by the U.S. government to start a trade war? Will this spin out of control?
Trade war, there will be no winner for any kind of trade war. I think he in a sense. But on the other hand, he has a campaign promise he needs to sort of fulfill.
You mean it's a midterm elections, it's domestic politics?
That's right, yes. He wants to sort of cut the size of the U.S. Trade deficit. So that's the campaign promise. It's not the right way to resolve the trade problems, differences between China and the United States by sort of raising the tariff.
Welcome back, Ambassador Zhou. It's 5 years since China first put forward the idea of a Belt and Road, and Mr. Xi Jinping was the architect behind the blueprint. He came to Boao 3 times.
It's a great honor for us to have him with us during this upcoming annual meeting, and he is expected to make a very important speech. And of course, a number of leaders of countries in Asia and in other sort of regions will be invited to the opening. I think that the Belt and Road, of course, is enough from our point of view, for that matter, for the point of view of developing countries, is a new model of globalization, I think. That's how important it is for developing countries and for emerging markets.
But does it mean, Ambassador Zhou, that China's Belt and Road Initiative aim to replace the old or existing world economic order? Because the Americans and the Europeans are quite concerned about this.
we can, I think we hope we can work together, and we should be able to work together, because that will be in the interest of everyone. And actually, some of the European countries have expressed their interest in being part of the AIIB projects. So they want also to take part in. So that shows they understand this is not a exclusive, sort of project. It's an inclusive project.
But the issue, Ambassador Zhou, is whether this blueprint of Belt and Road Initiative threatens to challenge the leadership of the U.S. and the primacy of this superpower. That's their top concern.
So I think that's exactly where the misunderstanding is. I hope they are not they don't see things that way. But unfortunately, maybe that is the case. Though they mistook China's Belt and Road Initiative as a attempt on the part of China to replace their sort of model of globalization. I hope they will understand their model of globalization has gone wrong, and there are sort of things which need to be corrected, and so that the globalization will be more open, more inclusive, will be more balanced, and will be win-win for all. Yeah.
This year marks the 40th anniversary of the friendship treaty between Japan and China. What do you think of the dynamics of the two economies? You have spoken of that a little bit, but will you do anything special? For example, will you host a sub-forum in Tokyo and Beijing separately to enhance exchanges?
Every time Chairman Fukuda will lead a very large Japanese delegation to our annual meeting. So large number of members of business community from Japan will be with him during our annual meeting. And so as I said earlier, there will be a dialogue between Chinese business people and the Japanese business people. So I think China and Japan are both important economies in Asia, and China's the GDP, of course, now is about 11 or 12 trillion, and the Japanese economy is maybe 4 or 5 trillion US dollars. So making a large part of Asia's the GDP. So if China and Japan can work still more closely in trade, in economic area, then I think Asia will benefit from that. The world will benefit from that.
Regarding the bilateral relationship between Japan and China, I don't want to go too far because that's very complicated. At least one issue should be featured prominently. That's the retreat by President Trump from TPP, and this seems to have laid the groundwork for Japan to assume the regional leadership. But can Japan play the role of a master and architect to put together this TPP? And what do you think of China's response?
TPP, negotiations are still going on without the United States. So let's wait until they finish their negotiations. I think they all understand what they need is regional cooperation, even without the United States. And protectionism is not the answer. And obviously, many people, even many people in the United States, come out to criticize Trump for his protectionist policy. And in terms of Asia, of course, RCEP, negotiations with regard to RCEP are going on. And so I think, I hope TPP without the United States and RCEP could coexist. And then they will be, I hope there will be a positive interaction, and also there will be more connectivity in the future. Obviously, what we all need is regional cooperation, and this is very important. And China cannot develop just by itself. Other countries can't develop without China, so yeah.
But the White House may look the other way around. President Trump has imposed tariffs on China's imports and placed restrictions on investment, particularly on the frontier of high technology. Now, you were ambassador to the United States, and you even handled the crisis of the EP3 surveillance plane in Hainan in a very diplomatic way, and got the job done beautifully. Now, what do you think of the bluff by the U.S. government to start a trade war? Will it spin out of control?
Trade war, there will be no winner for any kind of trade war. I think he in a sense, considering his background. But on the other hand, you know, he has a campaign promise he needs to sort of fulfill.
You mean it's a midterm elections, it's domestic politics?
That's right, yes, yeah. The midterm election is around the corner. And he wants to sort of cut the size of the U.S. trade deficit. So that's the campaign promise. So he needs to do something to show that he's serious about it, about his promise. So I think now things, obviously, it's not the right way to resolve the trade problems, differences between China and the United States by sort of raising the tariff. Obviously, this is not the way things need to be done. That's sort of what many U.S. leading sort of public figures have all agree.
Thank you so much. Obviously, this is an hour of nail-biting negotiations with regard to sit down and talk. Thank you so much for accepting our interview, and wish you great success in the opening ceremony and conducting this annual forum in Hainan.
Thank you very much.